Welcome to the So Far So Rare podcast. This week, I was joined by Sean Newsham, aka Psufans2. He is a professional DFS player that's daily fantasy sports, and he plays fantasy sports for a living. He's a top 30 gallery on SoRare and co-host of the SoRare Data Strategy Show. Well overdue this appearance. Finally, we could make it work. I hope you enjoy the episode. Please do like the video and subscribe to the channel. So, Sean, aka Psufans2, what's happening? Welcome to the podcast. I think it's long overdue, to be quite honest.
Yeah, we've tried like 3 or 4 times and it just hasn't worked, which is funny because I'm usually super available for stuff. But I think the one time we tried to do it, I was really busy. Another time I had, I believe, a doctor's appointment. And then the other time I was on vacation. So
And then the other time you were washing your hair, I'm sure, and some other excuse.
I had to make you earn it, I had to wait and play it off a little bit.
And then I met you in person. You're like, oh my God, this guy's so lovable. I have to go on his podcast now.
Oh, yeah, there was no doubt about that. I mean, it was more so you're just like, oh, man, I really need to get this guy on the podcast, I think.
Yeah. So you had quite the like hypey sheet, like hype post on Twitter. Top 30 valued gallery, co-host of the SoRare Data Strategy Show, professional DFS player, and organizer of the best meetup in SoRare history. That's the most hypey intro anyone's had in months. And GaryVee was last week. He wasn't even hyped up that much. Yeah, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. So you do play DFS / SoRare full time?
Yeah, so I've been playing DFS full-time. For those unfamiliar, it's daily fantasy sports. So I've been doing that professionally for about a decade now. I think I started in like 2012, where I focus on sports like soccer, college football, a lot of random smaller sports, stuff like that. But those are some of my priorities. But last year or so, I've spent most of my free time dealing with SoRare, dealing with different things within the SoRare stratosphere, because I just really enjoy the platform. I think it's a really fun way to watch games. It's a really fun way to go about things.
Yeah, no. And have you took any interest in baseball over the last 10 years?
So I actually started playing DFS. I think the first sport that I got into was baseball, because I got into DFS, I think, in like the spring or summer of like 2012. And the only thing going at that time was baseball, because back then they didn't have a bunch of other things. So I started with baseball. Over the years, I've sort of not played as much baseball and lost a bit of interest in the game, because it's not as exciting as other sports. Like I can watch a hockey game, a soccer game, a football game, be super invested. Whereas like baseball, watching it on TV is just really boring for me. It's just it's not engaging. I will say I enjoy going to a game and sitting in the stadium with, get all you can eat hot dogs out, right? Like that's great. Like I like going and sitting in a nice weather game, enjoying the sort of atmosphere, but watching on TV just sort of drags on for me.
If I could go and sit in an empty stadium and it was all you can eat hot dogs, I'd be happy. Baseball's a bonus.
You don't need anything else at that point. You just give me the food, give me the popcorn, the hot dogs, the nachos, call it a day. I'm good to go.
You've already won. Yeah, actually, it's funny because as an American and someone who's probably experienced this a lot more than me, like I have to say, I went to my first baseball game. I think I went when I was like eight years old, when I was in New York. That's like 20 years ago. But I went with HG like last week, off the back of the Orlando trip. And I have to say, when I was there and he kind of taught me it was great fun, because I thought there was a good bit of action. There's a lot of balls thrown. It's good fun every single time. There's always that thrill of, is it going to be a home run? Is he going to fucking clean this? And then even whenever there's like the downtime, there's always guys out in front of you warming up with good seats or throwing balls, and people are trying to catch them, or they're shooting t-shirts into the crowd, or there's food to go and get. There was stuff to do, and I kind of enjoyed that. I was here the other night, a little bit of jet lag, couldn't quite get to sleep. And it was baseball was on the TV. It was like 1 a.m. here. And I was like, this is so boring. There's just so many breaks. Like, I just want to see the guy throw the ball. I just want to see him throw the ball. And it wasn't happening. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be a slog. And then they've dropped it. So we may as well just get straight into it. They have announced a deal with the MLB. Now, I read somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, but I definitely read someone say, it might have been Nicholas, long-term and exclusive. And they're two key things for me.
Yeah.
What I'll tell you. Do you want me to tell you what I think first, or do you want to tell me what you think first?
No, whichever way you want to go about it.
I'll go, because I feel like you're more likely to have a more educated opinion on this. So you'll be able to either hype me up or chop me down after I give it. I think like there's these concerns that I see a lot of people having about, like, they haven't even got football right. Do you know, there's so many issues with the current platform. It's a shit show. And here they go with MLB and, oh, like, you need to sort out football first. And they're just distracted by this. I think the bottom line is that in the world of NFTs at the minute, and particularly sports, it's like this arms race for licenses. And I think whenever you have the opportunity to grab, like, I think it is, as I say, an arms race, everyone's trying to get all the licenses, and they need to go and get all the licenses and then work out how to hire people and make it work. You know, you can't do it in reverse where you get everything perfect and then you try and get them and they're gone. It's like, it's better to get started than to be right necessarily. I think anyone who looks at this, obviously there's those concerns, but I think overall, if you're looking at this in a negative light, you're an idiot, in my opinion, because securing a license like this on a long-term exclusive deal is fucking huge for the platform, huge for the exposure in the American market. I am probably top 2, top 3 YouTube channels that are SoRare dedicated content in the English-speaking world, and 5% of my audience is American. 5%. How many Americans speak English? Do you know what I mean? That's a lot of people. So, like, that shows like how little exposure SoRare has in the US. So by getting licenses like this, making it more of a household name, I just think it's absolutely huge. I really do. I think it's amazing. And obviously there are concerns. I've given all the disclaimers. I've sat on the fence a little bit there, but like, all in all, I think it's an amazing move. And I also think if you're sitting there thinking this is a bad thing, you've got an old scarcity mindset on you, not abundancy. There's more than enough money to go around both markets, the football and the baseball. And I think it's exciting. I think sitting thinking, oh no, it's going to affect the football, the soccer market. You know, it's people are going to go and buy their baseball cards. If that's worrying you, you're probably overexposed and you probably don't believe in SoRare long term anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, hit me with your counterpoints or agree.
No, I mean, I kind of agree. I'm actually, most of the time when we get these announcements, I'm just sitting there, like, I'm pretty sure, like, the last announcement, I was one of the people that are just like, this is going to be terrible or not really worthwhile. Whereas this one, I think it's a really positive aspect for a lot of reasons. So first reason, like you said, right now we're in like an arms race to who can sign a league or a sport. And then what we're seeing is they're using those sports to be used as a proof of concept for other sports. SoRare has the best proof of concept of anything because what they've done with soccer. That's why they used the Eredivisie as like an example to use for these other leagues and make it happen. So when you're bringing on one of the 4 main American sports and you're sort of paving the way to other aspects as well, it's huge. On top of that, I actually think baseball can be done really well within the SoRare realm. I think there's a lot of issues with other sports like football and like even hockey and basketball. I think there's some issues with them. I think baseball can work really well within the SoRare sort of atmosphere, but I think they need to tweak it a little bit. So I think there's a lot of positives to go with it. I agree with you. I think anyone that thinks this is the negative is just sort of off base on things. I do understand where people are coming from and the worries people have from a sort of soccer aspect of things. Like I understand why people are worried about that, why people are saying like, you can't get that right. Why are you focusing on this? I think what we're going to see is we're going to have different teams focus on both things. There's going to be sort of intermingling between the communities, which I think is good. I think that you obviously want to expose the people that are there for soccer to the people that are there for baseball and vice versa. You don't want to overwhelm them to where they're just annoyed, but you also want to incentivize them to possibly participate in both avenues.
Yeah, 100%. I'll definitely probably buy a few baseball cards as soon as they come out. I wonder how much they'll market it before it comes out. I wonder how, like, because whenever SoRare football came out, it was different because it was such a new technology, such a new thing, and SoRare wasn't even it would have been something that people were like, oh, what's this? Is this a scam? Is this going to die in a month? Is this dodgy? But now, because they've legitimized the name, they've launched it with a massive partnership. I wonder, like, there won't be the same opportunities that people who got into the football market necessarily had. Like, these cards aren't going to go for pittance, but like pennies on the dollar, if you like. But will there still be that kind of time lapse where we will all still be relatively early to that baseball market, and as the marketing ramps up over time and as more people in the baseball world get into it and more join, like, basically what I'm asking you is, how do you think these prices look straight off the bat? And do you think there's a lot of space for growth, or do you think it'll be hyped from the get-go?
I think it could be hyped from the. So the difference is, like you talked about with SoRare, when SoRare came on, like I wasn't on the platform when SoRare came on. Were you there like day one with SoRare?
No, I was there September 2020.
Okay. So like when we're talking about like day one of SoRare, like there was like 20 people. So anybody that showed up, like they were so early. I know I was talking to our friend Jimmer. He bought like a Morioka rare for like $2. Like
Yeah.
that's just how much it cost. It cost like $2, whatever that was in ETH at the time. It was just very minimal. I think we're gonna likely be early in regards to the baseball product that comes out. However, the prices are not going to be what they were for the soccer product when the soccer product launched. Like you're going to be looking at prices that are going to be a bit higher. They're going to have stuff that is going to cost you a bit more to get in, but that's because the built-in user base is already significantly higher than what it was when SoRare came on board. Like for example, if they launched tomorrow, which we don't know when the launch is going to be and they're going to actually sell cards, but like you and I will both realistically probably be at least interested and probably buy some cards. That's already like 10% of what the user base was when SoRare started, and that's just the two of us.
Yeah, I'm excited. Do you know who you'll buy?
I mean, I think baseball's nicer than even like soccer. Like you're going to have guys like Mike Trout who are obviously elite level players that are great, but there's going to be different strategies, I think, that will go into it. You're going to look into different types of stacking. But I think one thing that will be really interesting is if they run it on like a daily aspect, you're going to be super incentivized to have loads and loads of players so that you can sort of pick matchups based on how it is. Because a lot of how DFS baseball goes is it pertains to the pitcher that you're facing. Because obviously, if you're facing Clayton Kershaw, you're going to have a more difficult time hitting, no matter if you're Mike Trout or a replacement level player. Whereas if you're facing the fifth pitcher in the rotation who's just not very good, and that team is facing him, it's a major increasement in your expected value for that day. So I think if they go from a day-to-day aspect, you're really going to be incentivized to have a lot of players so you can run different matchups.
That's so interesting because that means that necessarily it doesn't matter about the team you play. It's more the pitcher playing that day. Because what I noticed in baseball is they'd play like 3-4 games over 3 or 4 days against the same team.
Yep.
Like,
do you know off the
top of your head kind of roughly how the season works?
162 games. You play
162 games in a season.
162 games. You play. There's 4 teams per division. You play. I think each team in your division, like, I'm not sure the exact numbers on it. I think it's like you play each team in your division like 12 times. You play each team in your league like 6 times, and then you play each team in the other league like 3 times or something. I'm not sure the exact numbers on all that, but it adds up to like 162 games, 81 at home, 81 away. But yeah, like you said, like so soccer, right? Like if you have Ajax players playing against Feyenoord or you have them playing against Bayern Munich, like they're much different and the team matters. Realistically, in baseball, the only thing that matters is who the pitcher you're up against is, because that's realistically the only person that impacts what you do on that day. And it's the same thing. Like you have left-handed pitchers versus right-handed pitchers. You have certain batters will produce a lot better versus a left-handed pitcher than a right-handed pitcher. So you're going to have situations where you just have a lot of different rotations and ideas. There used to be, so when I used to follow, and I don't follow it as closely anymore, but like there was hitters that would hit literally like 500 against left-handed pitchers, and then a right-handed pitcher pitched against them, they'd hit like 120. So like anytime any left-handed pitcher would go against them, you want to play that guy because he's likely going to mash. And then anytime a right-handed pitcher against him, you just completely ignore him.
It's crazy. Like there's so much to learn. And I think the other side of this is, well, there's 2 things I want to bring up. I'll bring this one up first about the whole baseball partnership. I mean, what people like us, not necessarily you, I suppose you're a DFS person, you'd probably take to it like a duck to water. But like for me, maybe, and other people like me, our edge is probably football or soccer, actually just playing the game that we know better and that we can watch better and that we can follow better. Everyone doesn't have to go balls to the wall on baseball. Everyone's going to want to buy a few it'll have a bit of fun and get involved. It'll be the massive FOMO. No one's going to want to not be involved. But at the same time, it's one of those where I look at it and I'm thinking, of course I'm going to get a team. But then equally, I'm like, it could be the same as like Asian football is to me. I keep trying to care and I really struggle to care. Same with the MLS. I keep trying to care and I'm really struggling to care. And like, I think with baseball, it could be that where I'm like, oh, this is so much fun. Brilliant. Get my Shohei Ohtani and do this and do that, and ooh, this is so much fun. And then it's like I could see it's either going to go that way, and I'm going to become like a mad baseball fan, or I'm going to be like, actually, I can't be arsed keeping up to date with who's playing who and what's what, and fuck this. But everyone doesn't have to play it. It's just if you want to play it, you can.
It's one of those things. So my DFS journey is effectively like I go where the money is made, but not in the general sense of things. Like the biggest sports in DFS are NFL, MLB, NBA. I don't even play them really because there's so much stuff that comes out where people are maybe not as knowledgeable at, and I can win more and have a better ROI there than elsewhere. Like a good example. So COVID hit, and me and a group of people all started playing League of Legends DFS. So I had never watched a single game of League of Legends in my entire life. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic hit, and it's the only thing going on. And we were waking up at like 3 a.m., putting down like thousands of dollars on League of Legends DFS. And it was crazy. So, realistically speaking, if baseball SoRare is really sort of profitable and popular, I totally can see myself going that way. However, if it's not, I can totally see myself not really bothering with it as well. So it's a really interesting situation because I do think there's a lot of chances that people are going to be interested. Like people that are on SoRare for soccer are going to look at SoRare for baseball. Like even the people that are like, I hate baseball, I have no interest in it. They're going to at worst look at it and see if it's something that maybe is of interest to them. And you could run one team and sort of see how it goes. The thing for me is you're capped with what your resources are, right? So let's say you are looking at baseball and you have to spend 5 ETH for a team. Do you want to spend 5 ETH on your baseball team, or do you want to spend 5 ETH to further improve your soccer team that you're actually interested in? So that's where my concern is going to be is resource deployment and like where you're going to go with resources. Like how are you going to disperse stuff?
Yeah. And equally, we're talking about people going to baseball. This baseball is going to bring a whole new wave of people to the market. And something I'll be interested to see is the collectible factor. So it's everyone talks about it, but it is true. You know, America, Canada, it's kind of where the hub of card collecting and sports collectibles has been over the last decades. It's only really this kind of soccer card thing is starting to get Europeans a little interested. But bottom line is, I don't know what the percentage is, but it feels like 90% of the collectors are from America. And for that reason, you know, a lot of the American sports cards are way more expensive than any of the soccer or European sports. Like the most expensive cards in history, I think the top 10, none of them are soccer. And the top two are Honus Wagner and Mickey Mantle cards from the 50s or 60s or whenever the fuck it was. But like what this makes me think is baseball cards are obviously known for being really collectible. They were kind of, I think, the OGs of that kind of sports card collectible thing. And that's why they're some of the biggest sales in history. Now, you could also get this wave of, as maybe Top Shot seen with collectibles in American sports, maybe people will come in with a collector's hat on as much as they'll come in with a fantasy hat on. Whereas what we've seen in the soccer market, SoRare football, I keep saying soccer because you're American and because we're talking about American sports, but it's football. You know, it is very utility driven. When a Joshua Kimmich unique goes for more than a Messi unique, it kind of said it all for me. It's definitely utility driven. I think we all know that now. But there is a little bit of collectibles, and people kind of like the jersey mints and the one-offs and the rookies and stuff, but no one really gives a shit. But I think these baseball crowd are going to come in and actually really give a shit. I think that happens. Maybe I'm wrong. But do you think collectibles will matter more, as much, less?
It's possible. My concern is that typically the baseball crowd, the baseball fans, the people who like baseball are typically older men. That is generally who likes baseball. So my concern
Like Laird and people like that.
yeah, exactly. Older men, right? Like Laird.
Yeah.
And it's a concern to me that is the sort of fan base that you need, the baseball fans, are they going to be interested in this cryptocurrency game? I definitely think a lot are, obviously, but I definitely think that it is a more older person game that maybe isn't as appealing to a lot more youthful people like ourselves that maybe are out here looking at it from a different sort of eyeglass.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I just wonder, like, I wonder, like, why. Maybe I don't wonder why. I've never really thought about this, but I'm thinking about it now. Like, why was Top Shot so crazy purely from a collectible standpoint,
I don't
but
think
maybe
it
so
was.
rare?
I think Top Shots was a, hey, show up and make 20x on your money from this drop, and that's what Top Shots
Yeah.
was. I was not a big Top Shots fan.
Did it end in tears? Did it all end in tears?
I honestly don't even keep up with it. I think some people
Yeah.
are still partaking, whether or not how big it is, I don't know. But like to me, it was big. I showed up for the drops. Did you show up for drops?
I didn't even dabble.
Literally the drops. I looked at every drop and it was like, if you show up with your $500, your minimum return is going to be 5,000. Or if you show up with
Wow.
$20, your minimum return is going to be like $300. I'll tell you who's going to show up in those situations. Literally everyone. If you're like,
Yeah.
here is free money, people are typically going to show up. When that free money dried up, nobody showed up anymore. So I think that Top Shots just was a free money sort of situation, and then once
Yeah.
that dried up, people didn't care as much. Whereas like SoRare is different. Like there's utility in the card, so you
And
actually
it's
have
fun.
interest in what's going on.
Yeah. Well, look, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, there'll be a lot more news on it. It's coming this summer, apparently. I'm interested to see the people it brings to the platform. It'll be interesting from the podcast perspective because what I like this podcast to be personally, and you maybe notice this, like in your strategy show, maybe you go more into actual in-depth strategy. I don't know, maybe I don't know, and what other podcasts are there? All these guys maybe talk more about football. I think this podcast is generally a bit of a general talk about what's happening in the SoRare ecosystem. Maybe talking a little bit about our galleries, maybe talking a little bit about what happened here. But it's not like we're talking already. We haven't even talked about the crazy. I know it was a while ago now, but I haven't recorded a podcast other than with GaryVee since. But Real Madrid, Man City, what a crazy game. We're not talking about football. We're talking about SoRare and the ecosystem. So it's going to be interesting from this podcast perspective how we start to bring in baseball and what's happening on that side of the game, because I kind of want this podcast to be a general overview of all of SoRare, whatever that entails. So if anyone is a diehard baseball lover, SoRare NFT fanatic who can talk, reach out to me, because I won't necessarily need a co-host, but I'll definitely need someone who can regularly pop in and give me their thoughts. Speaking of other sports or other things, I don't even know if it's not another sport, but it seems that way from the timeline. Women's football, come at me. They put out a survey. Not everyone got the survey because I know I didn't get it, but I seen screenshots of it, and it looks like they've got some sort of women's football licenses, and they're wondering how to incorporate it within the SoRare ecosystem, how they bring it in. Are these players usable in SO5, the soccer fantasy? Or is this fantasy as we know it male fantasy and there should be a separate female one? It seems like they're trying to weigh this up. What's your take?
So I think to start with I also didn't get the survey. So I didn't get it. I actually popped in the general Discord. I pop in there like once every 4 months because something pops up that I feel I need to express my thoughts on, and then I just don't go back in there again for the next 4 months. But I think the survey was flawed to begin with, and they lied in the survey,
Oh,
whether it was
wow.
intentional or unintentional. But they came out with the survey. This is effectively what the survey said. We've looked and done research on many leagues, and we have seen that high-end players scored the same from men's and women's soccer. However, it was then sort of talked about later that they looked at the NWSL, which I believe is the American version of like the MLS. And that league is even, right? Like that league is pretty evened out because there's a salary cap on it. Nobody is as big of a favorite. But the problem is they said they'd use multiple leagues, and they're also, let's be honest, right? They talk about bringing on the NWSL. If they bring on the NWSL, they're going to want to bring in the French league, the Women's Premier League, and all of the European leagues. Well, things aren't the same in the European Premier League. So Barcelona, if you're not familiar, they are 29-0-0 on the season with a goal differential of like 160 goals. They've conceded 10 on the season, scored like 150 to 170. I forget what the number is. And like they have 6 girls on their team that average over a decisive a game. Like the one girl averages 2.5 decisives per game. So you're talking about people that are having L40s that are like 90, 95 points, that just like their floor is like 75 or 80. Well, you can't compete against that. It doesn't matter what you're like. I'm going to have Robert Lewandowski. Well, it doesn't matter because it can't compete with these other cards. So
Yeah.
the issue is, to me, is that they said that their scoring is the same, but like I could see there's either two options, right? Option one, they only looked at the NWSL, which is one league, and that league is even. That league does not have any ridiculous variances that come out with a major outlier that would sort of break the game. Once they go to these other leagues, it does break the game. So my perspective, and this might be sort of my own, is that if it weren't to break the game, I'm all for including it, because what's the difference between adding a women's soccer league and, let's say, the Japanese league or the MLS or the Russian league? Like they're all soccer leagues, right? So I'm all for including everything. However, I'm pretty certain that things will be broken if they include women's soccer in the same aspect as men's. But to me, the solution is super simple, right? And this is where it gets confusing, and why they, in general, like SoRare, in my opinion, looked bad with the survey they sent out, because I believe that it was a flawed survey where they leading questions based on false information, which is an issue. But in my opinion, that none of this even need to happen, right? You bring on the women's soccer, you keep it separated at first, you run weekly specials where you integrate the men and women's game each week, and then you sit there, and over the course of 6 months to a year, you see how the women's game compares to the men's game, and if it will break the sort of SO5 currently that is set up. And if it does, you keep things separated. And if it doesn't, great, then you run it. But if you have a situation, in any situation, where people come in and you have like L40s of 93, well, we see what the Legend does. It would be no different than running like Legend Cruyff. How broke would the All-Star Rare Pro division be if everyone was running Cruyff out there, right? Like, you can't compete against that, even with Lewandowski, or Messi, or Neymar.
Yeah, and it becomes you have to have that player. You simply have to, and then the price will just be stupid, and every other price doesn't matter anymore because you just need that player. Like, you're right, I didn't realize it, but I looked up Barcelona, or the Spanish Premier Division for women, and Barcelona 29 wins, 0 draws, 0 losses, 157 goals in 29 games, with 10 conceded. They've 87 points. Which is obscene, and it is one of those. Like, don't get me wrong, we there are many players we have that are overpowered. Guys who go off to Asia who just seem insane. Guys who play in the MLS who used to be like, imagine what Lorenzo Insigne will be. But like, I don't know. That's all part and parcel of the game at the minute. I think the thing is, people. This is such a weird one because people automatically go to sexism. Do you know what I mean? So it's automatically taboo and a touchy subject. The bottom line is, it's completely different leagues than have ever been considered before, played at a different level, and it's going to change the game massively. And I think, based on the feedback I've seen and based on the reactions I've seen, I don't think there's any way they come in and incorporate them as one, because people will be fucking livid for the reason of 157 goals to 10. And it's nothing about it being a women's game. It's nothing about it. And it's nothing to do with that. But then, I'm trying to like play devil's advocate to myself here. What if they came out and said, we're going to add the Bolivian league? And what if there's a league over, like, I don't even know what the Bolivian league looks like. I just picked it out of my arse. The Romanian league, the Slovenian league, I don't care. Irish football. If it's a men's game and all of a sudden there was an equivalent team, would that be as much of an issue?
I think so. I think you'd have the same issue. If anything fully breaks the game, I think we would have an issue.
Yeah.
Because
I think you're right.
Like you said, there are meta players right now that like average 70, 75 points a game, but they fail. They fail sometimes, and they also don't just rip hundreds. If you had people that literally hit 100 8 out of 10 weeks, and when they have a bad week, they put up 80, you just realistically can't compete without owning that card.
Yeah, I hear you. It's a touchy one. I think, like, as you say, it's one of those where it makes sense to kind of add it in as its own entity, as its own game. I think the problem might be if they only have a couple of teams' licenses to start, if they don't have a full league's worth or a couple of leagues worth to launch, they'll come out and maybe they'll want to incorporate it because they want variation in the teams. Do you know what I mean? If it's like if you come out with 50 legends and only 20 of them have cards and you're running legends tournaments, you need more legends before you can really run tournaments that are varied. Anyway, it'd be interesting to see what they do. And it's funny because Mel, the only female I know in SoRare, if there's any more, hit me up. But MDJ, where do you stand on the introduction of women's football to the platform? Was her question. So I think
Then I
that's,
actually
I
talked
don't
to
know.
Mel, and I think our opinions were both very similar, except for her opinion was basically um, if things would break, keep them separated. But she also trusts the team not to implement it if that would be the case. I'm a little bit more concerned from that perspective that they would maybe oversee it, or that we've seen like sort of a lack of game intelligence, I would say, from the team. And they could say that two players, like let's say there's a player that averages 90 and then another averages 20, and then two players average 55, or two players score 55 each. Both of the averages are the exact same. However, the only thing that realistically matters in SoRare is the outliers, because if people are consistently putting up 90-point games and that's just what their score lines are, you just can't realistically compete in the current matrix with that, because they are so much better than everyone else that you literally cannot win unless you have that card. We're in a situation where you can win with a whole pile of cards. Yes, obviously you'll win more frequently with the better cards, but if you have cards like this that are far, far, far above those cards, then you come into the tricky situation. But yeah, I think Mel had the same opinion as I did, that if it doesn't break the game, include them, because why not? Like you get you sort of, there's no reason to separate things if they're similar scored, right?
Yeah. I'm looking at like Messi when he was at Barcelona was borderline break gamey, wasn't he? When
No,
you look at
because
his
well,
scores.
so all right, let's say Messi was a broken game player at Barcelona. Some of these girls are going to be 10 or 15 points better than that.
Mm. Yeah. It's an interesting one, but I think as you say, like it's one of those where it's easier like if they incorporate them together and the women's prices go through the roof, you can't really take it back. It's better to kind of like implement it as its own thing, have some special weekly, see what's going on, and then maybe over time transition them together if it looks like it'll work. Maybe. But like I think until all the data's out there, all the data's been realized and they've really looked into it, I think they could almost hurt themselves where if they have the American is it the women's soccer league? Is that what you said? The WSL?
NWSL.
NWSL. So if they have the NWSL's data and they're the first team, they're the first league they're going to throw up, and it all looks good, and there's no mad outliers there, and they're like, oh, cool. They can get to the stage where like they want to release the Spanish version, but it's like, holy shit, what have we done? Now we have to take all the ladies out of men's because of this, and then there's no coming back from it.
It's kind of like a Trojan horse, right?
Yeah.
It's like kind of like what they're setting up. They're setting up like a Trojan horse, and that's like my main concern and my main issue with the whole thing was, I said I felt that the survey was misleading and wasn't giving the accurate depiction of what things are, and it was just setting up a thing for people to give answers based on not truthful information, and it was setting up a Trojan horse situation where you're going to do this, and then a year down the road you include the Spanish league, and then what do you do? Because it would just shatter the game. And then do you pull stuff out? Like that looks a whole lot worse than putting stuff in at a different date. So I'm with you. I think that you bring stuff on if you want to bring it on, and then you sort of see how it goes over the course of 6 months to a year, how it plays out, and then integrate it if you determine at that point that it makes sense to do so. But you should definitely not rush yourself into doing so.
Yeah. I think like I could see them so easily just doing the kind of like, oh, I could see the PR that comes from it, the sort of forward thinking equality, like, oh, men and women's soccer on an equal footing and SoRare fantasy and da 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 da. And then almost doing it more for that than and breaking the game happily. Do you know what I mean? Like I could see it happening because like, don't get me wrong, equality in sports is absolutely huge and it's everything. But there are differences between the games. Rightly or wrongly, there are, and like I just think they need to be very careful. Look, bottom line is more will come out over time. I'm kind of talking from like a relatively uneducated standpoint on it. I can't say I know the women's game, but like I just think they've more to lose than gain by throwing it in based on what I've heard so far. If anyone completely disagrees with anything we've said, please reach out because I'd love to hear your take on it. Right. Sean, is there anything else on that or MLB?
No, I think that both of them are interesting at least, and right, and then both of them are expanding upon what SoRare is, which I think is cool. So I'm excited to see where we go with some of the stuff. More so, I think MLB is very exciting. I think that's a huge new stream that hasn't been tapped into yet.
We also seen golf rumored. I seen some article, God knows how reputable the source was, but golf is supposedly in the works. So theoretically, by the end of 2022, even by the end of the summer, we could have MLB being played. There could be some sort of women's football. I don't actually know, maybe for next season. Golf could be on the way. PGA Tour, I heard. We could have the Premiership. Imagine. If all those things were to happen, what does that do? Albeit, whatever, per Dan will be working 200-hour weeks. Not even physically possible, but he'd be doing it. Like, the scope of growth for SoRare over the next year or two, it's kind of it's exciting. I think it's very exciting the amount that they can do, and that it's all been pie in the sky stuff to now, but it seems like they're starting to actually get some of these licenses and make some of these things happen. Obviously, there's going to be issues. Obviously, things are going to be executed probably quite poorly, as they have been in the past. But from a growth standpoint, which seems to be their main concern, from an onboarding standpoint, it seems pretty exciting.
Yeah, there's tons of avenues coming up, right? We're talking about. I mean, before this, we were talking about bringing on the Dutch league into the Russian league, into the Peruvian league, all these different leagues that they're bringing on. Well, they're sort of all within the same atmosphere and sort of the same soccer idea. Whereas like Premier League, you bring that on, that's a huge step above what we're talking about with some of these other leagues. Like that's like bigger than La Liga, which was massive. Then you're talking about you have golf, totally different avenue. You have baseball, totally different avenue. So like the growth that they can get is sort of breaking off. Like you look at it like a tree, right? It's going into a bunch of different branches now where like it can make the whole tree stronger because of where it's going.
100%. So look, it'll be very excited to see what happens. I think golf would be a fun one. I don't know how they would do it. I imagine they go into really in-depth stats and stuff about like greens and regulation and fairways hit and yards driven and this is and that's and all sorts of stuff, not just winners, and top fives and things. Or maybe it would be a game where you're not just picking one golfer, you have to pick three per like per round or per tournament. I don't know how they would do it, but like golf is something I kind of like. I don't watch enough of it. I used to play a lot of it, and then I stopped a few years ago. But like I think golf's something I could get into. It's kind of all year round as well.
It's so golf is the one sport that I cannot get into. I find it. I don't like playing it. I've played it in my past, and basically it was just an excuse to go ride around a golf cart for 4 hours. But I've never been a big golfer. Watching on TV is dreadful to me. I don't understand how people sit there for like 12 hours on a Saturday and watch the Masters. I just sit there and I'm like,
I'm typically like if I ever watch anything, it's like Sunday of the Masters. It's not really the whole tournament.
yeah, you
It's
show
the
up like
crunch
hole
round.
15, right, on Sunday.
Yeah.
I get
Or like
that
Ryder
because
Cup.
that's generally exciting. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Golf's not my thing. I think again though, so we're talking about things that I think can be done well within the SoRare atmosphere and how they can sort of do it from a fantasy perspective. I think golf can be done well as well. I think golf makes a lot of sense because it's generally speaking year round. You have tournaments every week. However, you have different people in each tournament. So it's forcing people to have different sets of golfers because certain players won't play the week before major because they're preparing for it. And then you have these Joe Schmoes who are out there that really need that tournament and they play their hearts out and they put up a really good score. So the only concern I have for golf is you're limited on players. There's only so many golfers that are going to golf on a given weekend. So like I think
actually compete.
Yeah, like you're looking, I think most weekends it's somewhere around like 120. So like you have 120 golfers or so on the weekends. It's There's not many people. We're talking 120 golfers right on the weekend. I have that on realistically on like 11 teams, and so where I have that, right? So in the soccer atmosphere, well, we have hundreds of teams at this point. So it worries me a little bit about how compact things would be.
Maybe like it would be almost like a specialist league where you have to pick like a top seed, a second guy, a third guy. Kind of like you might have your John Ram, but then you also have some other guy and some other guy who I can't even name because I don't know them, from further down rankings or the world leaderboards or whatever it is. And you kind of have to pick guys from within certain parameters to compete. I don't know. There's a million ways you can do it. It'll be interesting to see if it even happens. It was a kind of, I don't even know where I seen it. Another quick one for you. This is kind of exciting for me. Apologies to people listening on podcast, but people on video, you'll be able to see this. Who does that look like to you, Mr. Newsham?
Oh, you got your boy Danny Parejo card.
I have a signed one over on the shelf behind me, but this is my boy Danny Parejo. Kike reached out to me on Instagram. I won't give away second names or anything, but I'm getting very excited. He reached out to me and said he's friends with Danny. So apparently he's meeting Danny later this week. He's bought me the Valencia shirt that Danny wore in the card I have, and he's going to get him to sign it and hopefully record a little video. So I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I tell you this, it's made me very, very excited. It's made me very, very excited. I pray it happens.
I'm looking forward to the Nellis Parejo crossbar challenge.
Man, I swear to God, I hope it happens. I don't know why it's happened, but there's definitely like a little kind of man crush there. It just comes from, I don't know, it was almost serendipitous when I won Game Week 200 and got the limited edition card that no one else has, and then followed it up with a ticket card, and then followed it up with the Player of the Year. And now I can safely say that I am the largest Danny Parejo collector, NFT collector on the planet, which is very exciting for me. So look, let's hope it comes through. That's one for listeners to stay posted for. Keep an eye out on socials. It'll be very exciting. And if you're listening, Kike, no pressure. Now, Sean, we've got loads of questions. And then we have a rejigged 137 game we can surprise everyone with, just to keep everyone on the edge of their seats right to the end of the show every week. Question: was there anything else we need to talk about before questions, or we just ply into them?
Well, I mean, I think a question for you is, so why did you not buy a Danny Parejo Super Rare instead of a Rodrigo Super Rare the other day?
Is it on the market?
No, I mean, I'm sure you could get one for around the price you paid for Rodrigo, though.
I think it was Il Fenomeno, maybe. Is that a person?
Yeah, Fenomeno.
He has the 10 of 10, which I kind of liked, because the 10 of 10, and he's number 10. And I kind of wanted that. And I made a few offers which I thought were fair, you know, kind of in around that 4x rare mark. And he was, I forget it. This was, I've hit him a few times over the last few months. Anytime he lists it, I know he wants out. I might hit him with a wee offer now. Maybe he's panicking a bit.
There you go. I mean, it's a good time. It's never a bad time to offer, right?
I mean, what would be a fair offer? Will I ping one live? He'd say no live too. I'd say Parejo. Let's go and check out rare price 0.45-ish.
0.5-ish probably on the rare, I would say.
So what do you think's a fair offer for a super?
2 ETH is probably really, it's like a above fair offer that should hopefully get accepted.
Well, I've got 1.973 on my balance. Well, I hit him with a 1.73. Well, I hit him with a 1.75 and see what he says.
No, you just go the whole balance. Really what you do now is you send him the whole balance, and then you send him a DM on Discord and show him that that's your whole balance and that you're out, and then I need this card.
I don't even need it though. That's the problem. I want it.
It's a good card though. It's like a legit good card.
It's a great card, but I don't know how to utilize it. Maybe it doesn't matter when it comes to my guy, but like I could buy many cards that I can utilize way more. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I seen? Do you know what I saw? And the price kind of shocked me. I think I messaged you about this. 2 people shocked me. Tony Cruz, 1.4, 1.3, something like that. He was like nearly a 4 ETH card not too long ago. And I know the market's dipped, but ETH is cheaper. It's still Tony Cruz. He's still contracted at Madrid. He's not like 34. I think he's like 32 or something, is he?
Yeah, he's still in an age where you'd expect to get a couple years out of
it. And the position he plays, you'd expect a few years, right? So that surprised me first and foremost. Like, yeah, Tony Cruz's price surprised me. Like, let me see. What's a Vanaken sitting at?
Vanaken list was 1.5. I don't think any have sold. Actually, I think one sold at 1.2.
One sold at 1.37 2 days ago. So like you're talking in around the same mark. I mean, champion versus challenger. I don't know. International cruise for Germany. I don't know. That kind
Chris
of
is done though.
considering.
Cruz's
Eh?
international career is over.
Was he out?
Yeah, he said he's not playing anymore internationally.
Oh shit! Well, I missed that.
That's
Okay,
actually a good thing for him, in my opinion, because it means when he's off on international break or when they're off on international break, Tony Cruz is able to relax and recover, which I think is a positive for SoRare, because international breaks, the rewards are so poor anyways that you don't realistically care about them.
And then I have another question. What have I missed on Morioka?
He just hasn't been good. He got an injury where he missed a few weeks, and then he just hasn't been good since he's been back, and he hasn't been consistently playing.
Okay, but is it fair to say, well, like you probably know better than me, is he going to be at Charleroi next season?
He apparently wanted a transfer, but I have not seen any details on that. And part of the reason why I liked Morioka, apparently though, he wants to stay in Europe, is what I heard.
Okay.
But the reason I like Morioka, and the reason is why I like some of the Asian guys in the Jupiler League or others, is because when they eventually go back to Japan, which most of them typically will go back there to play at the tail end of their career, they're usually still really good when they go back to Japan. So like I like having cards like that can produce now, and then even when they get older and tail off, they just go back to their home league and do really well.
I hear you. The reason I ask is because I saw that his super rare was up for 3 ETH. And I was like, a super rare Morioka for 3 ETH. Let's say you get that guy down to 2.5, 2.25, maybe a bit ambitious, but still, you get my point. I was like, 2.5 ETH-ish, let's say, for the Morioka super rare. Like his rare probably wasn't far off that.
No, his rare was in the 1.5 range earlier in the year. It was definitely
peaked at 1.8. Peaked at 1.8.
And he was slapping. He was the best midfielder on the platform by far.
And like, I get the personal circumstances, I get the potential for transfers, blah, 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 but a little injury and not really coming back from it at the end of the season yet. Like, if this guy rests for a summer and comes back, that super rare could be one of those powerful cards on the platform. But I don't know. I looked at it and I had a balance and I was like, should I be going for this? It made me think, is what I suppose I'll say, but I don't know. I didn't go for it, but I just think some of those, like, the prices now, if you genuinely believe in the platform long term, I think a lot of people are panicked. The ETH drop. Let's talk about that actually. ETH, shat itself. Talk to me from a SoRare perspective. What are you thinking?
So typically, what happens is when ETH just plummets, the market picks up, and I've seen that the market has picked up over the last 2-3 days than what it was before the ETH crash. Like I've been able to sell some trash for like I think I generated like 1.3 ETH over the last day or two. And I really did not sell a card that was worthwhile to me at all. So we've seen that. And so what I've noticed is actually, if you look at a lot of more marquee level younger players, there's a big gap between the last sale and then what the floor is right now. Like, so for example, if you look at Ryan Gravenberch, his last rare sale was at 0.85, which was like 2-3 days ago. Mm-hmm. His floor is 1.65 now, and no one is undercutting it, which means that his realistic value is somewhere between 0.85 and 1.65, but nobody's paying that new price. So it's somewhere in there, but all it takes is one. As soon as someone pays like 1.3 for that card, all of a sudden that's his new floor. And like, that's where people are going to go and market. So I've definitely seen with some more marquee level young players. Like I noticed it with Gravenberch, and noticed it with Jesper Karlsson earlier today as well. Like his floor was 1.5 earlier in the day, and his last sale was like 0.98. So
Ethan, someone offered me 1.25 for the super, which is like 6 and a bit time. I was like, I have to. And I have under 23 super rare defenders. Like I didn't need them. And I thought the money could go to use. But anyway, what I'm getting at here is there's guys, and it's fair, you know, like you're going at people and you're saying, I'll give you 3.5 extra super in last sale. And they're like, okay, well, last sale happened whenever ETH was 40% more valuable. So you need to pay me more. Do you know what? Kind of coming at you with this angle. It's making negotiations a little bit harder. It has to be said. But that said, some people panic and shit themselves. But I think the time for that.
I mean, you know me. So I generally, the way I work on SoRare, I only care about it in an ETH perspective. That's all I care about it in, because it's easier for me if let me rephrase that. I only care about it in an ETH perspective unless it benefits me to care about it from another perspective. But I also am cognizant of the fact that, like, I'm only going to do that if it benefits me. Otherwise, it's an ETH perspective. But people will act like you should bend the knee sort of and like agree with whatever their valuation is. It's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm doing it based on ETH value. Like, if the card was 0.3 ETH, I'll give you 0.3 ETH for it if I want it. If I want to sell it, I'm going to sell it at 0.3 ETH, et cetera, et cetera. But obviously, if the entire market sort of trends upwards or downwards based on the way that it's trending, that impacts things, right? And then I'll adjust my strategy that way. But yeah, I go with it based on ETH perspective. I'm not going to look at it and be like, the last sale was at 1 ETH, I'm going to pay you 1 ETH. That's what I want. And they're like, well, ETH went down 35%. I want 1.35 ETH. Oh, okay, then I'm not going to pay that. So realistically, the way the market works, right, is it doesn't fully keep up with ETH if it goes high. So if ETH went to 5K right now, it wouldn't fully keep up with that. Similarly, it doesn't fully keep up with it if it crashes. Like, it doesn't fully drop the same way as well. Somewhere like in the middle.
Yeah. Well, look, it's been interesting anyway. A lot of different people, a lot of different thoughts on it. I suppose thoughts about anyone who held a lot of crypto and they're shitting themselves. You'll be all right, hopefully. The next thing is questions. We have questions to talk about. Let's go and talk about some of them, I think. I keep getting sidetracked, but there's been so much because obviously, like, it was 2 weeks ago since I talked to Plastician. The whole trip to America happened in the between, and I haven't really like done this type of conversation since, because the GaryVee thing, which I've mentioned a couple of times, if anyone listening didn't catch it, you can find it on my YouTube, or you can find it the episode before this on this feed. It was good fun, a bit surreal. Did you listen to it?
I listened to parts of it. I listened in and out of it.
It's because, like, GaryVee is a bit of a Marmite character, I think, in SoRare, in NFTs, in everything. I really enjoyed talking to him. I thought it was fun. But did you? I think the thing is, like, a lot of people, I found it kind of funny and surreal because, like, the GaryVee boom was very real. It did have a big impact when he tweeted initially, and albeit it came around the same time as the 50 million investment. So, like, how much it was GaryVee, how much it was the 50 million. But the boom definitely started that night when he tweeted. But it was kind of surreal being over there and talking to him. So yeah, I don't know. Need to try and follow up with some other big guests. I mean, I followed up with you. I think that's pretty big.
You did. I mean, I told someone I was going to be on the show. Won't name names, but they're like, "Oh, that's good. They got GaryVee to curtain jerk for you this week." I was like, "Totally." The main event was today. No, you were just setting it up for this.
So, right, question time. Let's go over it. We've answered Mel's, which had the most likes. Second most liked question. Actually, the most liked is from Orangefly. Can you review my gallery with Laird and tell me to buy Carlos Gil Rare?
I can always tell people to buy a Carlos Gil Rare. I mean, I think you heard it on the trip. I think I told everyone to buy a Carlos Gil Rare on our trip to Orlando as well. So it's a pretty easy strategy for me to run through. But yeah, we're the reviewing of the galleries. We have like 60 or 70 people that are on the list for us to review a gallery. I heard that we had another entrant in the last couple days, Nellis, that was looking for theirs possibly reviewed as well. So we have a lot of people in there that we're trying to get different versions and different ideas of galleries to look at.
You see, I could actually really do. I messaged Laird because I could really do with someone like you actually telling me what I should actually do, because I am a true degenerate of the game and I play it for fun in many respects, and I do not use my ETH efficiently, and I do not have an efficient gallery. I haven't won a star reward in over a year, and my gallery was worth 200 grand or something. That's a fucking disgrace. And as much as I think it's fun owning the guys who you want to own, it's more fun winning star rares.
Yep.
Winning
is always more fun than losing, right? Like, you just have more fun. It was funny. So for those that aren't aware, so Nellis bought a Rodrigo.
Oh yeah, okay. Here we go. Here it comes.
2.25 ETH. Like 2 days ago. So me and Laird were just talking about. We were just having a talk about whatever we were talking about. And he's like, "Oh, hey, by the way, Nellis is interested in maybe us doing a gallery review with him." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's great. Sounds good." And then Laird told me, he's like, Nellis really wants to like revamp a bit of his gallery to really try to win. And then like I'm just sitting there and I moved on to looking at whatever auction was going on at the time. Laird comes back like 5 minutes later. He's just like, LOL, guess what? I'm like, what? He's like, go check out Rodrigo Super Rare. And he's like, Nellis has bid 2.25 on a card he can't even use. So we're just, Laird and I were sitting there just laughing hysterically.
Man, I swear to God, this isn't even a lie, right? I was listening to Laird and Black talk about Hype Boys on their podcast. I swear to God, I was listening to Hype Boys. I was listening to my phone. I was playing a game of FIFA. I picked up my phone, paused it because I hate like listening to a podcast while I'm doing something on my phone. So paused it, went over to SoRare, seen the Rodrigo was coming up, hit bid, put the phone down, hit play, and the next player they moved on to was Rodrigo. I shit you not. I am not even lying. I think like, look, there's two sides, right? Part of me was like, ETH is dipped. That was like a credit card purchase at auction. ETH is dipped. I'll get it cheap on a cash price. And I was like, it's a relatively premium under 23 super rare. Whatever about his playtime, I don't really want to hear. I'm trying to justify it to myself. Just let me have it. And you are like, and I was like, I can buy this guy, and I don't know. I full on degen.
Do you want me to defend you here a little bit?
Please.
So I actually think if he gets the role on the right wing for Madrid and like starts, he's really good. I don't think that's in the cards in the near future, but I think he at least like has the potential. And the issue with the Hype Boys part and what Black and Laird were talking about, right, is that you don't want to be the person that buys them at the top of the hype, and Rodrigo is definitely at the top of his hype.
I know. He just did that against Man City, and I just bought him. It's super rare on auction. Yeah. I don't know. I think like I don't know what I think. I'm trying to justify it every way I can.
When did you buy the
card? 1 day ago, apparently.
Did you play him in the so you didn't get a chance to play him today if he's in the lineup?
Not today, no.
But he's not in the lineup today.
He is or isn't?
Is not.
That's good, because then I can play him at the weekend.
It might not be official lineup, but I believe Asensio is playing today.
So if he's not playing today, then that means I could not rest pretty easy, but I could be like, yeah, okay, he'll probably play against Cadiz at the weekend.
Maybe.
He'll come off the bench today and he'll score.
That's the problem with him, right? Is that he is like, I can't say for certain he will play. Most people, like a lot of guys, you can sort of get a rotational pattern and be like, I can play him at this point. Basically, if he sits a game, you're like, I can play him the next game. I don't know if Rodrigo's in that realm, but yeah, realistically, I mean, you should be able to play him because I can't imagine him not playing back to back. The thing is, I guess with where Rodrigo is like, all right, what's the worst situation with him? He subs in with 20, 30 minutes to go in the game, right? He's gonna play. It's not like he's not gonna play. He's not gonna sit. So like your worst case scenario is he subs on. That's not the end of the world. The end of the world is more so oh no, never mind. He is in the lineup today. I checked their actual Twitter instead of Sofa because I didn't trust Sofa. So Rodrigo is.
Let's hope he bangs 100. If he bangs 100, I hope he sells.
That's definitely possible. I mean, he's got a good stretch going right now.
Yeah. Anyway, that is kind of the problem, and that's another kind of thing in SoRare. If a guy is a rotation risk, he's as good as a DMP every week.
Arguably worse.
You can't trust him. Yeah, at least a DMP, you know.
Yeah, DMP, whereas like a non-DMP, like Rodrigo's going to tempt you every week you have him, right? Because if he does get a start, he's going to be really good. So you're just going to be sitting there and you're like, man, this Rodrigo against Cadiz, he's going to play and smash. And then but the issue is like, it's like a 35% chance he starts. So then all of a sudden you're just way behind the 8 ball 65% of the time.
Oh, man. Oh, God. I got that other super rare. We'll move on, but I don't know if I said it on the podcast yet. The Mario Rui. Did I say that on the podcast? Or was that before we recorded? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I bought him anyway. Play him this weekend. We stack. It'll be fun. Okay. Question time. It's been question time 14 times, and I think I've asked one. So, how much will the volatility in the current crypto market affect SoRare in the short and medium term, says JordanPaul.eth. we kind of touched on this. Anything to add?
No, I mean, I think that people need to view it not fully in the crypto space. Like, you need to understand that the market's not fully going to mirror the crypto space. You can know that if crypto goes up and ETH price rises significantly, it's going to lower the value of the cards to some extent. And then similarly, if ETH crashes but doesn't like full on fire sale, we can expect like the ETH price on cards to go up, but maybe the USD version won't really change.
We'll move on to another question. Where's the worst place to be tickled, and why is it a random bar in Orlando? Says Laird.
Man, it was all right, here's a quote. Let's see if you remember this situation. So we talked about Black and his drinking at the bar. So Laird was dying at your quote. Do you remember what your quote to Laird was about Black's drinking level on the Friday night we were in Orlando?
Was it that he drinks faster than my dad?
Yeah, it was that you are Irish and you drink
Yeah.
a significant amount, and your dad outdrinks you, and Black was outdrinking your dad.
I swear to God, for everyone listening, Black is a pint man. Certified pint man by me. Like, I like to think I can drink. Maybe anyone who's met me, there's a few of you out there. Maybe this isn't me sounding like, oh, this is going to sound like an asshole quote. Someone's going to pull this and put it on Twitter out of context. But like, I was out like 2 Saturdays ago and had this was over the course of a day, but we had like 18 pints, right? Now, that's a lot of fucking drink, but that's drinking from 12 in the day until 4 in the morning, right? That's a long day of it. It's not really that much when you think pint per hour. My dad would drink me under the table, and he would drink pints of Guinness all day, which is like a meal every time. I don't know how he does it. As in, when we go out for pints, the first one will match him, and then it's like he'll have 3 pints for every 2 I have. Black was drinking, I swear to God, he has that thing. You know when people like open their mouth and it's not even like they have to swallow, it just pours in. Like, he didn't gulp. He just poured it in to his belly. And I was there, fine form, first day drinking, Friday in Orlando, sun's out, having a ball. And I'm sitting there trying to drink these pints. And he's drinking 2.5 for every one I was drinking. It was frightening. And I caught up with him.
It did. It was so for those that aren't aware, so like I don't really drink. So like the meetup that we had, we went out Friday night to the bar and everyone was drinking. I was just hanging out, and Black was so drunk that he was just tickling people. And he just started tickling me because he knew I was the sober one and he wanted to get a reaction out of me. He was actually so offended that like I didn't react to him tickling, or like no one reacted. But the funny thing is there was a reaction, just wasn't what he noticed or was aware of. So HG was sitting there and you guys were fresh off the plane. So like he was ready to go to bed. Like HG was tired. You guys didn't get much sleep because of the time differential. And at that point it was like 3 a.m. what it would have been in France. So HG was talking to me. He's like, all right, Sean, you want to go in 20 minutes? We'll catch an Uber back to the hotel. Not 20 seconds later, Black's just sitting there tickling me. And HG just comes over. He's like, all right, time to go. And we walked out the door. He's like, yeah, he was tickling way too many people. It was time to go. So realistically, the reaction he got was just making HG want to leave. And that was sort of the reaction he got. He just didn't know that was the reaction he got at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a bit of a tickle monster, but it was good fun. And I'm sitting here now cringing over the fact that I'm sitting here acting like a proper pipe man. There's nothing worse than someone trying to talk about how much they can drink. But I want to let you know that as much as I'm saying I can pint, Black drinks more. I'm doing it to hype him up. I could not believe the amount that guy put in his stomach.
I thought everyone
he's not even that large.
Well, that weekend,
yeah,
there was a lot of drinking going on that weekend. I thought everyone was pretty not noticeably drunk. Till I wasn't there Saturday night because my plane flight with Sunday was terrible, so I can't comment on Saturday night. But Friday
one of the boys,
night,
I'm not gonna name him in case he doesn't want name. One of the boys got cut off from the bar and he wasn't happy about it. He was very, very unhappy about it.
Understandably so. But yeah, I wasn't there for that part, so I can't comment on that.
Yeah. The next question here from Daniel: did Nellis wear PE shorts from Lost and Found to the meetup?
Did I wear?
Did I?
Shorts? We both wore gym shorts. We both.
Man, they're comfortable. I got absolutely roasted over wearing them to see GaryVee.
Here is my take on things, Nellis. You tell me how much you agree with this. if I wanted to wear a suit or dress pants or stuff like that, I would have a job and go wear that stuff. I want to be comfortable. Why do I want to go somewhere and be miserable? I wear gym shorts 99% of the time to anything I do in life. My wife hates it, by the way. She can't stand it. But you're literally walking through Orlando, walking miles in Orlando. Like, yeah, of course you're going to wear gym shorts. Yep, you have them on right now. I also have a pair on right now.
Go on, show us. Gives the flex.
Okay, we'll stand up. So got the same thing going on right now.
Oh, baby.
Yep. It's a no-brainer, right? So I don't know, people that are complaining about you not being a I don't know, properly dressed person. I think you were definitely properly dressed. You're out there living life, being comfortable. That's what it's all about.
Hitting baseballs, kicking a ball about. I got roasted over wearing them to see GaryVee. It was a hot day. The last thing you need when you're going to speak to GaryVee is a sweaty gooch. You need a bit of variation in there. That's like, I don't care what people say. The last thing I needed was a bit of chafing. That would have really upset me and made my day really bad. All right, let's find another question. This one is from, Houseman. He was excited for hearing the dogs in the podcast. The dogs have made an appearance.
They've been Which word quiet. Do you prefer? They maybe have made a couple sounds, but overall, I've told Laird they're generally more chill in the afternoon. The morning time, there's just a lot going on in my neighborhood that they're usually more active. The afternoon, they're usually a bit more relaxed.
Yeah. Okay, there's a couple of questions here from Mark O'Sullivan. Mark always puts in good questions, so we'll give him a good bit of time here. Is it fair that all leagues are scored equally in SO5? I know where he's going with this. Is it fair that all leagues are scored equally in SO5, considering that the quality of the competition can vary greatly from league to league? Yes or no?
Yes, I believe so. I think that the way the game is set up makes a lot of sense to me, and it makes all of the different leagues. I actually have a really strong take on what I've heard before. So people in the past don't believe you should be able to win the best cards like the Mbappe and the Haalands in global. In my opinion, global is the most difficult contest to win because any card can be played there. Also speaking, you should be able to win the best cards in every region. So like you should be able to run the best cards you should be able to win the best cards in global. Yes, maybe you should be able to win a Haaland less frequently than you would in Champion or U23, but you should still at least have a chance. So I do think that like the way the game's set up is really beautiful to me. It incentivizes people to have cards from Asia. Like, so you've talked about, right? You aren't super interested in Asia, so you don't buy any Asian cards. Well, that puts you at a disadvantage because you're not as willing to do that. I think that's great because it incentivizes people to branch out, to play these other leagues, to play Asia, play Americas, because that's what you want. You want to have people incentivized to play all that stuff. If you all of a sudden remove the ability for me to win Mbappe with Asian cards and American cards, why am I going to have any of those cards? Because I can't win anything worthwhile with them.
Yeah. His follow-up question is, should this be taken into account when it comes to SO5 scoring? So I think he's bringing this up about the women's game and about he's trying to draw a comparison is what I think's happening here. But should this be taken into account when it comes to SO5 scoring? Like, is there any way they could? I think it's too late in the day now. I think this is a nice idea and all that, and maybe it's a terrible idea, but it's an idea that I don't think can be implemented now. But could they have weighted scoring depending on where you've scored your points? Like, if a guy shoots like bonus XP in the Premier League because it's a harder division, one would argue, than the Jupiler League.
I think it just gets really complex, right? Like, how are you going to determine? And then the part of SoRare is like, I know it's not super simple. The Matrix isn't like completely simple, but it is. Like, the idea of the game is simple. If you watch the game, I think you and I talked about it. The nice thing about SoRare is like, if I'm watching a game and I'm watching a midfielder boss the game around, and like the ball's on his foot all game, he's scoring well. Like, he's producing in SoRare. Similar, like if I see a guy score a goal, I know he's producing well. If I see a guy screw up and concede a goal, I know he's doing well. So like, in my opinion, I think that the way the Matrix is set up right now is really done well. And I know people complain about the scoring Matrix, but there's not tons I would sort of tweak within the Matrix. And I definitely wouldn't do like buffers for certain leagues versus others.
Yeah. So I think the bottom line there is, to answer Mark's question, We don't think it should be taken into account, and we do think it's fair. He has another question. I don't know how to play this one. He basically says, given another NFT platform have announced Arsenal, I thought I'd throw out a few questions. I think the big one here, and the general talking point around this is an Arsenal license for NFTs that are essentially carbon copies of SoRare. They're very, very similar. Okay, they're different. They look a bit different. They're different scarcities, blah, blah, blah. Same thing. I mean, it would be under the same license, it's fair to say. The Arsenal license has been activated and NFTs do exist. Like, there was a fun little nibble from SoRare. Did you see it on Twitter?
I did. I thought that was very favorable from a SoRare perspective.
Yeah, and I think it gave me confidence about the Premier League. And again, I'm not here on this podcast to try and hype SoRare up and get everyone excited for the Premier League. But basically, what happened was SoRare on the day that Haaland going to City is a thing.
Yep.
On that day, SoRare came out and said something like, "So, any big transfers happening?" Trying to get a bit of engagement. And Perez wrote under it, "Yeah, Arsenal or this other NFT company have signed Premier League sides to the platform," or something like that. I paraphrase. And SoRare commented underneath that saying "side" with a little asterisk, implying they only have one side. Now, very uncharacteristic for SoRare to nibble on something like that, give anything away, hint at anything from their official account. Nicholas says some things sometimes it'll make you a little bit bullish. He said stuff like they're still confident they'll get the top 20 leagues by the end of the year. He said a few more things like that over the last few days. But that little nibble sort of signaled to me the intent and the fact that they're confident they will get Premier League sides. And I also haven't seen it anywhere. I haven't went looking that was an exclusive license. And Nicholas also tweeted about it, didn't he?
I think so. And here's the thing, right? I will say, it's great for Ultimate Champions. Like, it's awesome for them. I don't think it's bad or anything for SoRare yet, because, like you said, everything that was being alluded to in tweets, and SoRare is usually really close to the vest, right? Like, they don't usually say stuff without it generally coming through. So, like, the way that they were reacting is like they're going to get the Premier League, and it's like, yes, it might not have Arsenal, but we're going to get the rest of the Premier League. And in that situation, it's just going to make Arsenal look terrible, because it's going to be on most likely a platform that isn't as successful, and Arsenal fans are going to be like, why is this the case?
Yeah.
But yeah, I came away with that optimistic from SoRare's perspective based on the banter that was going on back and forth. I made fun of Perez, actually. I told him that Nick sort of like body bagged him and put him into the ground in the SoRare Discord, or the SoRare Twitter, like, just absolutely destroyed him with their response.
Nicholas tweeted this. I'll read it. "We've seen players in the fantasy space announcing partnership deals lately. Some SoRare community members asked my take, not valid for obvious scams." So that's just his take on companies that aren't obvious scams. "I have lots of respect for all entrepreneurs trying to push the boundaries of Web3 in sports. We know how difficult it is. We've seen several cycles over the past 4 years, many deals being done and undone, and remain focused on building decade-long partnerships with all the top leagues and clubs in the world. We'll get there and are more confident than ever. Much more coming soon. Fire emoji."
Yeah.
Big man is alluding to the Premier League again, pretty heavy, hyping. So, yeah, I mean, I'm as confident as I've ever been that it'll come. I think saying stuff like this, if it doesn't come, is irresponsible, to say the least.
Yeah, no, I came away, I'm super, I think they're going to get the Premier League based on the comments. Actually, that is the most sort of, that's like the most bullish I've been in terms of them getting the Premier League.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I haven't felt as strong as I did after reading those tweets for a while.
To get that petty, I was like, okay, you gotta have something to get that petty.
Exactly. You don't say that unless you got something up the sleeve ready to go.
No, you do not say that unless you have it locked and loaded and you're like getting pissed off because other people are getting all the hype for something that you have as well. Or so I don't know. We'll see. It could be a very, very fun year with lots and lots of sports. The Premier League will be huge. I'll ask you this. I've heard sort of people talk about this. I forget where. Probably the podcast you were on, maybe. basically around how big an effect do you think the Premier League has on the ecosystem in terms of like an influx of people? Do you think there's this influx that people think? Well, do you think there will be an influx that people are all hoping? I don't think it just booms and changes the game overnight. Necessarily, I don't think it changes the things necessarily from outsiders. I don't think there'd be too many. I'm sure there's some, but I don't think there's like, oh my god, it's going to change the market because there's all these people sitting on the sidelines to get involved, but they're waiting for the Premier League. I think where you might see more is from people who are already in the game doubling down and believing longer term and wanting to be more exposed and depositing and paying more. I think it'd be more so money from within the game than money from outside the game at the minute. But I think overall the exposure it'll bring could be huge. And whatever deals, leverage, marketing that they get with a deal like that could be insane.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a great take. I think that inside the game is going to buzz huge when they get to the Premier League, and stuff's going to take off from within inside the game. But I do think the outside sort of aspects are going to make that worthwhile. Like I think we're going to see stuff come in from outside that's not already onboarded, and they're going to be interested because there's so many people. I mean, you're over there, you're over in that area. Is it something where like, do you hear about SoRare outside of your little SoRare bubble? Because I don't hear about it here.
No one in my real life knows or cares about SoRare, but lots of people in my real life know about FPL. And I wonder like if there's any way FPL is incorporated in this licensing deal in any way, shape, or form in terms of how cards are displayed, or some sort of link, or some sort of advertisement, or some sort of like the paid version. I don't know. I think like the other thing is FPL players are notoriously stingy and purists. The people who love it the most are proper FPL purists, and they might sniff at stuff like this. Maybe not though.
I mean, there's some. I know some FPL people that are involved in DFS that are also involved in. That's actually how I got. So how I really got into soccer was one of my good friends back in the day played FPL, and we would bet every season. And I'm talking like I remember the one year I finished like top 500 in the world, and he just smacked me. He just absolutely smacked me. He still just obliterated me, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, what? How? I'm literally top like 0.5% in the world or higher, and you just absolutely obliterated me. And he just was that into it. But then, anyways, he ended up getting into DFS as well. And I knew some other people that played FPL that are into DFS. Look, right? It's going to be a thing where you do get some people from FPL. You're going to not get some people from FPL. So I think it'll work both ways in that perspective.
It's weird. FPL, I actually lost interest probably about 2 months ago and haven't touched my team since. And it's like the first time in, I think, 10 or 15 years that's happened. And that is purely because of SoRare. Do you know? It's crazy.
I can't play FPL. It became too, I don't know, I just wasn't into it. DFS was always so I played FPL, then it moved into Daily Fantasy, which I thought was a way better version of what FPL tried to be. And then now I play SoRare more so than DFS Soccer because I think SoRare is a much better version of what Daily Fantasy was. Yeah.
We'll do one last question. Let me see. There's a few here to be fair. Like, thanks to everyone who this is a nice one. Alex Charles, believe he got married recently. Met him in Manchester. Congratulations, Alex. Maybe you didn't get married. Maybe it was a honeymoon. Maybe it was engagement. But I seen you do something with a lady. So congratulations on that. There's not many people in the SoRare world who can say they've done anything with a lady. So do you have a system for taking out profits, or are you continually compounding currently?
Is that a thing? People take out money on SoRare?
I know.
I don't know what you're talking about. No, I mean, so honest answer to that question is I have been compounding the entirety of the time I've been on. So I think I've been on for about a year and 3 months. And I think I'm at like 100 or 120 ETH worth of rewards that I've won on what I put in. And I've just put it all, like I've not pulled anything off, and I've just kept expanding my gallery. I have sort of like in my own brain came up with an idea of how I'm going to withdraw over the next, like, let's say 3 to 5 years. Now, let's say that things change that all the time, right? Like I could be a situation where I'm like, I'm going to sell off. I don't need to be on the platform anymore. It could be a situation where I'm like, I don't want to withdraw anything because the platform is still going up to me. And anytime you withdraw and take money off the platform, it hurts your SO5 game every time. So it's one of those things like, do you want to cost yourself ROI or do you want to cost yourself return to withdraw? But at some point, and I've been talking to some people, at some point you can't just continuously not withdraw and not take money off the platform. So I've come up with an idea of how I'm going to do it over the next 3 to 5 years, but I'm not starting that until like August or September. And that's what my plan is. My hope is that things sort of take off a little bit in August, September. And over the next 3 months, I plan to do well in the summer. My gallery is built usually pretty well to do well in the summer. I think last year I won like 45 ETH worth in the summer because my D1 teams are really strong in America and Asia. So summer is usually really good when other stuff is down. And then I plan to build up my bankroll and my ETH balance so that I can fulfill my gaps that I'm going to need to fulfill at the start of the European season. And then I'm hopeful that there is a sort of boom at the start of the European season that I can sell off some scraps. And then what I'm going to start to try to do is like, if I win 10 ETH in a month in rewards, which that's probably a bit higher than I realistically do. But like if I win like 10 ETH in rewards, I'll take off 5 and reinvest 5, something to that. But realistically, I don't care. I'm just sort of going to do it as I go and see what I feel like makes sense at the time.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's something I've thought about recently where like my gallery's nowhere near yours, but like it's still, what's your gallery at?
350?
350 ETH.
But like, so here's the thing, right? People think, we talk to people all the time, like Larry and I, especially people that want to do gallery reviews. So people are like, well, I have no options at like 5 ETH gallery. I struggle some weeks with filling out my lineups, even at 350 gallery, 350 ETH gallery valuation. Like I legitimately have situations where I am playing someone that is really, really not great in a lineup because that's just what I have. So it's a thing where even with bigger galleries, you end up having situations where you just do not have the people to put in.
So I think for me, like my perspective on it is, it's something I thought about literally the other day. It's about like, you can't just keep growing and compounding and put money in forever. There has to come a point. But I think I'd like to get to I do my kind of monthly, how much I made last month on SoRare. I'd like to get to a point where I'm happy with the size of the gallery. I'm confident with who's there, and then I can maybe like sell off X amount of rewards a month or win X amount of ETH a month, where I'm yielding enough that it makes me comfortable enough to maybe double down on content and try and do more of that in my life, and just have the back burner of like, oh, this is a nice little security.
Just talking. So like, you might not have seen this. So I'll ask you this question. So last weekend, so I'm not going to count limiteds in here. So we're talking